Hello, it is Topical Tuesday, the final day of May 2022, the day after Memorial Day. We still have our little bit of Memorial Day decorations, U.S. flags up in the front, flying the flag as always up on the flagpole up front. And it's kind of today's message based on this very disturbing, unfortunately, all too often, though, story in the news about another mass shooting. This one inside a school in Texas. I don't know, last week sometime, just before the weekend, I think. And I mean, obviously, it's horrible. It's sad. But the responses to it is what I want to talk about here today. I'm hearing a wide spectrum, an entire range of responses to this. As far as, of course, there's the typical immediate, especially in election year here in the U.S., everyone posturing for their political point of views. But then when it comes to people really seriously talking about solutions, unfortunately, I mean, I hear people saying nonsense like, oh, we want to make sure this never happens again. Like, that ain't happening. Like, I wouldn't want to. It's kind of morbid. But if they had the bet, I could go to Vegas and bet on that it ever happens again. Pretty sure I'd place that bet, no matter what anyone does. But what was interesting to me, and still is, I guess, is these quote solutions people propose. Like, some people say, oh, we need more laws against people being able to own guns. Like, well, these are, last I checked, criminals and deranged people, a combination of both, obviously, that are killing people. So do we need more laws against murder? Like when the Boston Marathon thing happened, like, I don't know, what was that, about 10 years ago? Did they say we need more laws against pressure cookers? Isn't that what they use there? Do we need more laws against knives? That's what'll be next. If they take all the guns away, then of course people will start killing each other with knives. Then they'll need knife control. So, that's all nonsense, not to mention we live in a country which was founded upon the belief that we have a God-given right to bear arms, to defend ourselves against whatever enemies there are, deranged lunatics, all the way up to the government, which is very often the same thing, to foreign governments, like it was back in the day during the Revolutionary War, or just to defend ourselves against common criminals. See, here's the thing. I grew up in an extremely anti-gun environment. My family, all my neighbors. Heck, I grew up in New York City. It's still one of the most ridiculously liberal places on earth. I can't even believe, once I got out into the real world and realized there was something else out there, I can't believe that that's what I believe. My mom was morbidly afraid of guns. She's like, oh, we'll never have a gun in the house. Like, it could go off. That's these things these anti-gun people always say. Like, the gun could go off. Kids could find a gun and play with it, go off. Well, that's irresponsibility on the part of the parents. They could also find a knife and stab themselves. But I'm pretty sure the parents teach the kids, hey, this is a stove. It gets hot. Don't touch the stove. Hey, this is a knife. It's sharp. Don't cut yourself and play with the knife. Don't run with scissors. Well, the same way, it's shocking. I guess not shocking. It's sad to me that my parents and other parents and these schools don't have a class, don't focus on gun safety. Where is the class on gun safety in a class? So there's not this nonsense about, oh, if you have some of the teachers armed and trained, like, what if a kid gets a hold of it and plays with it? Well, then you didn't teach the kid gun safety. What if he gets a hold of a knife in the cafeteria and plays with it or stabs him? Come on, cut the crap. Like, be responsible. Take some personal responsibility, right? I grew up with this real crazy belief. I never tested it, never thought about it. It was like, hey, of course, we don't have guns, so if anyone ever breaks into the house or whatever, you call the police. Like, well, look what just happened in this Texas thing. They called the police, and the police stood around for an hour, or 40 minutes, or 20 minutes, or 20 of them in the hall, or 100 of them outside, or I don't know, whatever the facts are. They're changing all the time because, for whatever reason. People that were in charge are embarrassed or covering up their ineptitude or their criminal. I saw somebody said like, well, the cops exercise their choice not to go in. Like, yeah, but they exercise their choice to be a cop. If you exercise your choice to be a cop, then you go in when there's gunfire and kids. If you exercise your choice to be a fireman and there's a fire, you go in. Are we going to see like 20 firemen standing out in the street going like, gee, I wonder if we should go in? There's a fire going on. While the parents are out there, if their kids were inside calling 911, the parents would be running in there to get their kids. I would. I'm sure anyone would. Like, would the firemen stop them? Oh, you can't run in there? Like, that's supposedly what these cops did. They handcuffed one mom who wanted to go in and get her kids. And then, if it's true, you can't believe that. How can you believe anything or whatever? But, as the story goes, and supposedly the cops aren't denying it, that when they let her out of the handcuffs, she did, like, kind of get away from where the cops were and run in, and she got her two kids and run out. Like, just like there was a fire. If there's a fire, the firemen go into the fire. Is it dangerous? Yeah. They risking their life? Yeah. But they're serving and protecting. They chose to be firemen. They're first responders. Like, that supposedly, I thought that's what the cops are supposed to do. So, who are these people that think like we should take all the guns away and only the cops should have the guns? Well, how'd that work out in this thing? Cops didn't feel like doing anything, or they thought about it, or they changed their mind, or they changed their whatever. Or what? Come on. So you're gonna defend you? You're gonna risk your life on that? I've been the victim of violence. Grown up in New York, been mugged at gunpoint a couple of times, knife point. A couple of times it was just a gang of guys who, when I think about it, probably had guns and or knives on them, didn't need them. It was a gang of guys, and there was me once, and there was two of us once, and whatever they said, we did. Like, but man, there's people that say like we should disarm all citizens. So only the government, the police, the government workers should have guns. But I'm pretty sure, I don't follow this a lot, but I think these are the same people that scream defund the police. Like the police are evil. They're out to kill minorities, and they're racist, and they're systemically terrible, but they're the ones that should have the guns, and we shouldn't have the. There's such irrationality going on. Here's the bottom line. There's only one thing you can be sure of, is your own personal responsibility, right? So if you have kids and you care about them, number one, you would never send them to a public school. I've been saying this for years and years and years, that I consider that a form of child abuse. But that's just because of the curriculum and the brainwashing and the nonsense. The drugs, the sex, the teaching, the brainwashing that goes on. And now, on top of that, it's very small risk, but there's this risk of this violence where some schools, they refuse, they stick to being a gun-free zone. Like, excuse me? You want to send your kids or anybody into something that's a gun-free zone? In other words, the only people that would ever have guns, you might as well just say, hey, criminals, come on in. Hey, bad people with guns that want to do some harm, come on in. There's no guns here to stop you. Only the police, who, if we call them, takes them 10 minutes to get there, and then they stand around the hall for an hour. Who thinks that's the solution? The government is the solution? Even cops will tell you, some cops, they like people who are armed and trained. That helps them, right? The firemen love people that have fire extinguishers in their kitchen and know how to use them. Like, they like people that have ladders in their kids' room in the closet, ready to throw them out the window and climb out when there's a fire. Like, last I checked, the government workers whose job it is to serve and protect us like when we help by protecting ourselves. And I'm just fortunate, growing up the way I did when I look back, that, we never had to depend on calling 911 for the police, because unless the police station was across the street, that criminal was intent on doing harm to us, we'd be dead long before those cops showed up. Or, like in this case in Texas, they showed up and they just sat around doing nothing, or talking or thinking or calling for more backup or whatever the heck. Come on now. What it comes down to is personal responsibility. And as a business owner, and hopefully you are if you're watching my videos, I often talk, almost always talk about advertising, marketing, sales, the money-getting parts of the business. But it all really comes down to business owners, entrepreneurs. We're exercising personal responsibility. The people that are working for us are not. They are exercising their need for us. They don't have personal responsibility for their income. We are responsible for their income, right? We better keep the business going. We better build a business. We better do advertising, sales, and marketing and get clients and, keep the expenses lower than the income so we can afford to pay their salaries, their commissions, their pay, whatever it is. But we have the responsibility. Well, in the same way, I just suggest, and this just seems to be a massive wake-up call to anyone who thinks otherwise, depending on the government, to help you in time of need. Like, yeah, sure, most of the time, some of the time, whatever, they help you. But sometimes they don't, like in this case. And sometimes they're actually your worst enemy. I mean, people are arrested all the time on false charges, and you look at the FBI. I mean, anything more outrageous that we've seen in the last 5 years or so, the FBI making up all kinds of things and fake kidnapping of a governor in Michigan and all kinds of, they won't release the footage of all their plants in Washington, D.C. with the Trump riot and the whole Trump thing. Like the whole FBI making up the whole thing to go after Trump because they didn't like him because he's an outsider and their heads were rolled and all their, he was anti-establishment and all that kind of stuff. Like, and yet there's still people left to trust the government and say individuals shouldn't help defend themselves. They should just be helpless. All individuals should be helpless. Oh, those are the same people. Those are the Marxists, the socialists that say all people should be employees. Nobody should own their own business. Nobody should make a lot of money. Everyone should be equally miserable and equally in fear. I don't think there's any more percentage of guns. It might even be less percentage of households with guns than when I was a kid. But I'll tell you what has changed: social media, locking kids down, anti-science mandates. Government's so untrustworthy. They stay 6 feet apart. Oh, sorry, we made that up. Wear a piece of cloth in their face. Oh, sorry, we made that up. That doesn't help either. Oh, kids have to get vaccinated. Oh, that doesn't make any sense either. Like what, I mean, the current kids are a mess. What do you think the next generation is going to be after they were shut out of schools for a year or two and told to sit apart and fear their neighbors or not see their teacher's mouth and face and the kid's face for 2 years? People are going to just be more of a mess. So I don't see this problem going anywhere soon. And you can harden the targets all you want. I hear that one too. Like, well, they should put more security in schools and, have armed guards in the schools. And we're like, really? So if a deranged shooter wants to be deranged and kill a bunch of people, and that'll certainly solve the problem in the schools. But doesn't he just wait until school's over and go over to the park? Go over to wherever kids are playing? Like, go to a sporting event, go to a soccer field, go to a basketball, whatever it is. Like, oh, then you're going to harden all those too? Like, go, again, what? Movie theaters, entertainment venues, parks, street corners, buses. Like, deranged people that want to shoot a lot of people are going to be able to shoot a lot of people. And, the hallmark of the liberals, that they live in a what-if world. Hey, what if there were no guns? Like, well, there are guns. Like, what if we could just be one big, happy global family? Well, there's China, and there's Russia, and there's South Korea, and there's Iraq, and, there's people who want to kill us. Iran, whatever. Like, we can't live in the what-if world. Okay, the world right now, there's a lot of guns, there's a lot of deranged people, there's going to be more deranged people. Time to take some personal responsibility. In the same way, we're either in a recession right now or about to be. If you're depending on someone else for your income, that's your fault. It's time to take personal responsibility, is it not? in all matters. As I stand here in the U.S., nothing more American than that. America is based on freedom and personal responsibility. We've gotten away from that as we've gotten bigger and bigger and allowed our government to get bigger and bigger and usurp more of our responsibility, more of our rights, and people happily hand it over. We just saw that graphically for 2 years during all the anti-science lockdowns and vaccine mandates and social distance, all kinds of BS. Nothing that worked at all, of course, but it all worked to control people. It all showed the power hungry, like how easily people are controlled and give up their freedoms. Like, I don't think Americans are that easily going to give up their personal responsibility to defend themselves in case an attacker comes in. Like, really? You're going to count on calling 911? Even if they perfectly show up and do everything right, they're minutes away. It takes seconds for someone to kill you or do a lot of harm. And in this case, they were minutes away, and then they waited an hour and did nothing. Nothing personal, but I don't choose to depend on that. If you want to do that, that's your choice. It's America. You can choose to depend only on the government, but you can't make me depend on somebody else. I mean, I'll depend, as a collective. For instance, my neighborhood here. I sleep really well at night, knowing that just about every home, if not every single home in my entire neighborhood, people are armed and trained to use those firearms. There is not going to be criminals coming in here. I remember when these riots were coming, which again, the government allowed all these riots a couple of years ago in the summer, all summer. The government's allowed nonstop every night. Protests during the day, riots at night, burning buildings, threatening people, destroying property, hurting people, killing people, all kinds. Government allowed that. Like, this is the government you want to depend on? Like, you sure? You don't want to depend on yourself? But I remember when we had some close by riots here and people were saying like, oh, what happens if they're coming out of the cities into the suburb? What if they coming to your neighborhood? I just started laughing. Hey, coming into my neighborhood. If there was any news of any mob or riot coming anywhere near here, every one of my neighbors be out on their front porch, smoking a big fat cigar and holding 2 or 3 of their guns and going, come on, what do you got? Take your best shot. Take your chance, because you're not going to live. So that's my kind of America. That's how I sleep well at night. There's many more criminals than there are ever going to be cops. So it's a good thing we have personal responsibility in this country. That's my take on it. You can harden targets all you want. People who want to find people to kill will find other targets. Like, they just will. Just the way it is. You can make guns illegal. Criminals will find guns. Drugs are illegal, isn't it? Isn't fentanyl or whatever illegal? Well, drug dealers find them. Drug dealers will do anything to get them. By plane, by tunnel, by person, by whatever. Same thing with guns. Same thing with anything you make illegal. Don't be thinking for 1 second that anyone else or any law or any rule or any government or any BS is going to protect you or is going to produce your own happiness. For that, take personal responsibility. Build your own businesses. Be an American. End of rant for Topical Tuesday. We got some bunch of scrolled through, but here's one from Everett Farnell. Talk about a red-blooded, level-headed, intelligent American. Let's see what Everett has to say. Schools are one of the few places in Texas that was going to be 100% gun-free. How dumb. How dumb. Right, that's what I thought when I saw this on the news. I'm like, wait a minute. This is Texas? And they're saying, again, I didn't pay a lot of attention, but this kid like drove up and crashed his car and shot at a couple of people across the street or a funeral home or something. And you're telling me those people didn't have guns? None of the neighbors that heard these gunshots, they didn't have guns? Like, what? Is this really Texas? What the heck kind of dumb town is this in Texas? Where there's some kid shooting shots around and then he shot at the school before he went in. And there isn't like a whole bunch of people coming up with guns, pointing them at him, going like, dude, one more move and you're dead, or just shooting the guy. Like, that's really Texas? It must be some, I mean, I know, Texas overall is red-blooded American, but it's got its liberal stupidity bastions, just like, heck, I lived in Chicago for a while. Chicago itself and the surrounding communities are bastions of stupidity. But at least 90% of the area of the state are sensible people. They just get outvoted because, there's an overwhelming number of ridiculous Marxist voting people in the city. Same in New York versus upstate New York. Same in Austin and other areas of Texas that are just, I mean, if you, it's your choice. You want to send your kid to a gun-free zone? I don't even want to. I see restaurants around here where there's a sign on the window before you walk in, there's a gun-free zone. I don't walk in. What am I, an idiot? Like, I'm going to walk into somewhere where you just advertise to criminals, hey, come on in. Nobody here has a gun? No, thank you. I live in Arizona. In Arizona, still most of Arizona, just like Texas, personal responsibility. Like, I am comforted by knowing when I'm shopping in a store or eating in a restaurant, there's all kinds of armed citizens all around. We ain't waiting for 911 to rescue us. And then wait outside an hour should they come in or not? Like, these are kids even. How much slower you think they react if it was an old guy like me? Unbelievable. Anyway, thank you, Everett. Thank you, anyone else. Hey, you agree, you disagree? Have at it. Post any comments you want anywhere. End of rant. That's it for Topical Tuesday. That's the day where I talk about something in the news. I relate it to business. In this case, it's pretty clear. It's pretty simple. Government's not your friend. Government doesn't solve anything. More laws is not the answer. More rules, more government, not the answer ever. Your own personal responsibility. That always has been, that is, and that always will be the number one answer. The best answer. That'll do it for Topical Tuesday. Thanks everyone being here today. I'll catch you back here again tomorrow on World Wide Web Wednesday.